Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, or good morning, depending on the part of the world where you are. Let me introduce myself. My name is Silvia De Ascaniis, and I work at Università della Svizzera Italiana. I'm the coordinator of the UNESCO Chair in Promote Sustainable Tourism in World Heritage Sites. Maybe some of you already met me online via the MOOC, Massive Open Online course called e-Tourism Communication Perspectives. So this Hangout is part of the MOOC contents, but today I will cover a topic that hasn't been covered in the MOOC yet, except for some examples. This topic is the role and use of ICTs for religious tourism and pilgrimage. I would like to start by sharing my video because I prepared some slides for you. I go now on sharing video. Here it is. And these are the slides I prepared for you. You can find me on Twitter, but also you can follow my research updates via ResearchGate. You find everything in the slides. So let's start with a fact, with some numbers. UNESCO, in its official website, tells us that approximately 20% of the properties inscribed on the World Heritage List have some sort of religious or spiritual connection. And to be more precise, those properties that can be found in most countries around the world, they constitute the largest single category on the list, meaning that actually heritage of religious interest are everywhere and they have a high number. In fact, we can say that a lot of the tangible heritage that is around us has some sort of religious connection. For instance, close by where I'm speaking, I'm settling now in Lugano, that is in the Italian part of Switzerland. Close by, there is a quite famous World Heritage Site that is called Sacri Monti, or Sacred Mountains of Piedmont and Lombardy. They are groups of chapels and other architectural features created in the late 16th and 17th centuries, and are dedicated to different aspects of the Christian faith. Actually, they have an extraordinary beauty, not only in terms of arts and architecture, but also in terms of the harmony they create with the landscape, with their natural surroundings. Let's go on now with some definitions in order to clarify some ideas. What do we mean with religious tourism? In religious tourism, the focus is on the destination, which is particularly meaningful for a certain religion. And religious tourism is driven mostly by a need for knowledge and a need for worshipping, a need for practicing own cult. We speak of knowledge because a person might be interested in knowing the religion of another culture. In fact, religion is an important aspect of culture, but also he or she might be interested in understanding better his or her proper religion. On the other side, many of religious tourists, they are driven by the need of worshipping, of practicing the cult. Here I put some examples of famous religious attractions around the world. Here you can see the Sagrada Familia, that is one of the most important Christian cathedrals in Spain, which attracts every year millions of tourists, both for worshipping and for cultural, aesthetic, let's say artistic reasons. If some of you has Indian roots, might have recognized this place. It is one of the most sacred places for Indians, for the religion of Sikhs, and it is the Amritsar. Also, of course, we can recognize here a sacred place for Jewish, that is the so-called Wailing Wall, and it is in Israel. On the other side, we have spiritual tourism, which has a much broader connotation. The focus here is not on the destination, but it is on the internal search of the person. And it is driven by a need for meaning, by a quest for the meaning of life. It is not necessarily related to a religion because the quest for meaning is something that is shared by, we can say, every human person. Often the seeker does not know what she or he is looking for something that might give meaning to his or her life, but not necessarily he can define what this something is. And there are a number of ICTs in the form of websites or mobile applications or whatever to support the quest, the need, the search for meaning. For instance, I made a quick search and I found more than 20 mobile applications to facilitate spiritual experiences only in India. We come now to pilgrimage. The focus in pilgrimage is neither the search nor the destination, but rather the path, the route people follow while going on a pilgrimage. And the path here has a cathartic function, meaning that while walking, going on the path, the person has the time to ponder on him or herself and can change he or himself from the very deepest of his or her soul. When it is driven by, in general, we can say an ascetic need, so the need to go beyond the tangible, to go beyond oneself, and if it is driven by also a religious belief, it can be defined like a mobile manifestation of devotion. You can see in the picture one of the most famous pilgrimage in the world. That is the pilgrimage of for the Islam religion. It is the pilgrimage to La Mecca. Also, here is another example: is the pilgrimage of Hindu for the Hindu festival that is called the Maha Kumbh Mela. In the ancient times, pilgrimage was driven by three ideas. First idea was that God reveals himself especially in certain places. Second, that God reveals himself especially in certain circumstances. And in order to receive benevolence from God, with benevolence we refer to good health or peace or any kind of help. So in order to receive benevolence, it needs to go to those places in those circumstances, walking across certain paths. So in this sense, pilgrimage is a universal human experience, as I mentioned before, because everyone at a certain point in life has a quest for life meaning and a search for his or her roots. There is plenty of pilgrimage routes in the world, in Europe, everywhere, and pilgrims, especially in ancient times where they did not have ICTs to support their walking, they used to write travel diaries where they annotated the path, the routes that they followed, but also the problems they encountered and the places that were most recommended for staying overnight. One of the first travel diary for pilgrims is considered the Itinerarium Egeriae, or the route of Egeria. Egeria or Eteria was probably a cultured noblewoman who made a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And so she, in her diary, she describes in detail all the way that she followed to arrive to the Holy Land. The main pilgrimage destinations in Christian tradition were four. I can speak of the Christian tradition because it is my tradition, so I know more about it. Nothing to give nothing against the other tradition, but just because it is my experience. In the Christian tradition, first we had the pilgrimage to God, so the most important one that was the pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Then the pilgrimage to the center of Christianity, that is to say, to St. Peter in Rome. Then the pilgrimage to the Tomb of Ascent, and especially the most famous one was the one to Santiago de Compostela, St. James. And then the pilgrimage to the apparition place of an angel, specifically to Mont Saint Angel in Apulia or to Mont Saint Michel in France. Goethe, a very famous German poet, even wrote that Europe was born in pilgrimage and its mother tongue is Christianity. This to underline the role of pilgrims to build, to contribute to the creation of the Western culture. Why we can say that? Because actually pilgrims can be considered as a sort of cultural melting pot. In fact, when they used to leave their own places to go to a pilgrimage place, they not only brought with them a bag with the essential things to survive, but they also brought a metaphorical bag full of their own tradition, own rituals, and their own knowledge. And so along the route, meeting other people and meeting the local people living in the places where they went through, they had the possibility to share their metaphorical bag full of culture and traditions, but also to again make the bag full of the culture and traditions of the people they met. And when they went back to their home places, they brought back all these bags full of new knowledge and new understandings of other cultures. So we can say they acted as cultural melting pot. What is exactly the relationship between religion and culture? Of course, religion is one important part of culture, but also religion influences our way of conceiving life, which in turn molds our cultural tangible and intangible heritage. So I want to underline here that it molds also our cultural tangible heritage. In fact, faith tends to become culture because it is an important aspect of people, and so it also creates tangible products. Let's see some examples. For instance, if we look at the relation between religion and art, we can see that works of art are manifestations of faith, of hospitality, of charity. If we took the example of St. Peter's Square, look at the shape of the square. It has a round shape which seems to embrace all the people that are gathered in the square. And actually, this was the very basic idea. Since in Christian religion, the value of one important value is hospitality. So St. Peter's Square was conceived exactly to give the idea of hosting all humankind. Also, religion has an impact, especially in ancient times, in shaping the urban architecture of cities. If we look at at many Italian cities, and here I reported the examples of Siena and Florence, we can see that the city was built around a square or around a church. In fact, if you look at a city and you have in mind the religion that is mostly practiced or that was mostly practiced in that city, you can have a better sense of the territory, a better understanding of the city itself. If we look then at the relationship between religion and gastronomy, or also the culture of wine, we can see that values, so intangible aspects, are made tangible. The very meaning of conviviality means live together, and it comes from the Latin cum vivere. But also the very meaning of company, of the word company, is to share bread, and comes from the Latin cum panis, with bread. Think, for instance, at the value of hospitality. If we look at our host as a person with a value, as someone with an intrinsic value, when he comes to visit us, what we want to do is to host him in the best possible way, is to let him perceive all our happiness of having him or her place. And so we, for instance, we prepare a good dinner for him. We share wine with him. So the way, not only what we eat, but also the way we cook food stuff is a representation of values and has a relationship with our faith, with our creed. Then if we look eventually at the relationship between religion and music, it is another, music is another aspect where we can see the influence of religion. I reported here the example of the Gregorian chants. They are a beautiful example of harmony where the music and the song of the monks had to be only one voice. So many voices giving the impression of being just one voice. In the Gregorian monks also developed a form of art around the Gregorian chants. You can see in the picture the so-called miniatures. The miniatures were the texts of chants, and they are truly works of art. So tourism to religious and sacred sites is an opportunity both for visitors and for tourism-related institutions and professionals, at least for four aspects that emerged from what I told you until now. First, because tourism at religious sites helps to discover and remember the past. In fact, artistic and cultural heritage is a sort of time machine which allows us to better understand who we are, from where we come from. So our identity, looking at what people before us has built. The second reason is that it conveys a sense of territory, because sacred art is disseminated within the territory and helps understanding why a territory, for instance, a city, is built as it is. Then it helps to understand cultural specificities, and in this way also to practice a sustainable tourism, because when you understand the place where you are, and when you understand the culture of the people you meet along your route, you are also more prone to respect them, to respect the places, and to respect people. Last but not least, tourism to religious places helps promoting a process of cultivation via personal growth, through exchange and dialogue. So a process of self-acculturation and self-cultivation. But we will see this aspect better in a few seconds. Let's now go deeper in the relationship between tourism, religion, and learning in order to place ICTs among these three objects. Tourism is a time of freedom, freedom from the daily routine, from the daily duties. So it is a time when we can cultivate our interests, and when we can choose to make cultural experiences. Religion can be a driver of tourism, both for worship and knowledge reasons, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. So culture, and religion in particular, might become a mediator of religious experience. And the visit to a site with religious or sacred connection is a learning experience both for believers, because they can deepen their understanding of faith, but also for visitors, because they can encounter cultures, customs, stories different from their own ones. We can represent these relationships in these terms. Let's put first religion, that is a driver for tourism. Tourism, on its part, puts in contact with religion, but also promotes and fosters learning, might raise interest in tourism, or at least enrich tourism. Learning can have as object religion, and religion promotes and fosters learning. We can put ICTs in the middle of this triangle. So what we do at the UNESCO chair in Lugano is to try to understand the role that ICTs might have in supporting the relationship between religion, tourism, and learning, and also to understand how tourists use ICTs in order to enhance their religious and learning experiences at places at heritage sites. One example of an ICT that was developed to support religious experience of tourists was the mobile application of the Jubilee of Mercy. You might remember that the Jubilee of Mercy was launched by the Holy See last year in order to promote the idea of a merciful God. A mobile app was developed that was called 365 Days to Mercy, and the idea was to follow the pilgrim, to follow the Christian person every day with the words of God. So it was a 1-year-long app. Then I would like to conclude this presentation by telling you what we are doing in order to better understand the role of ICTs for enhancing religious tourism. And also to let you better understanding what is our idea of ICTs for religious tourism and pilgrimages. So I'm presenting now some studies and research directions we are following. First, I would like to share with you a special issue that was published some months ago in the online journal, International Journal of Religious Tourism and Pilgrimage. It is a fully online, fully accessible journal. The issue is preceded by a research manifesto that is titled Pilgrims in the Digital Age. This research manifesto is the output of a workshop that was held in Lugano, to which took part a number of scholars somehow related in fields that are related to the field of religious tourism and ICTs. All of these scholars worked on the manifesto and signed it. And in the manifesto, you can read that we identified 2 routes for developing studies about ICTs for religious tourism and pilgrimages. The first route is more a kind of social sciences studies, where and the idea is that there is a need to understand the use that people make of ICTs in their experiences in order to better develop and to better support them via ad hoc ICTs. The second route is a more technical route where we make some hypotheses of interesting, useful software or apps that might be developed to support this kind of experiences. So I warmly encourage you to have a read at this research manifesto. One pioneering study in this area was presented at the conference, International Conference on Tourism in Cyprus. In this study, we analyzed a sample of online travel reviews about an attraction of the Christian tradition, that is the cathedral of that is the Church of St. Paul outside the walls in Rome. And our research question was if the artistic experience, that is the experience of the arts that is represented in the church, if this kind of experience might become a driver of a religious experience. So we analyzed the reviews, searching for the parts where people reported the kind of experience they had at St. Paul outside the walls. And the answer is seemingly yes. In fact, many people, while speaking about the artistic beauty of the church, they also reported about the atmosphere they perceived there and the fact that their soul was somehow enhanced during the visit they did. A second study was just finished and submitted, and I can say was already accepted and is going to be published in the journal Church Communication and Culture. In this second study, we used the same sample of online travel reviews about the Church of St. Paul, but this time we wanted to make a classification of the arguments that are put forward by visitors when they recommend a visit to St. Paul, in order to see which are the typical arguments used to recommend a visit to a site of the religious heritage. It came out that when people recommend a visit to this kind of places, they mostly argue using arguments related to the appearance, of course, that is the interior, the exterior, or the decorations, but also arguments related to history and culture, and importantly about the atmosphere and the condition of the church. In fact, if an attraction is well cared about, it is well kept, this is perceived as a symptom of the value this attraction has for the owners. Then, specifically, an attraction of the religious heritage, it is recommended if it is accessible to anyone. So, if it is not closed to certain people professing some kind of faith, and if it allows the own cult. Maybe because it offers religious services, or because it has a certain atmosphere. It creates a certain other place of an important person for that creed. So in this kind of studies, we used contents generated via ICTs, and specifically user-generated contents, online travel reviews, to understand the demand side. Also, I will show you later other studies where we analyzed the supply side. Some other studies that we are developing concern the usability of websites of pilgrimage routes or religious attractions. Usability has to do with the ability of a website or a mobile app to reach the goal of its users. The users, when they access a website or when they use a mobile app, they want to find certain kind of information, or you want to have certain services. So the website or app, it fails or it wins according to the expectations of its users. We made usability tests for the website of Via Francigena, and actually these usability tests allowed to improve the website of the Via Francigena. You might know that Via Francigena is a quite old and famous pilgrimage route which connects Canterbury to Rome. And it dates back to the Middle Ages, where pilgrims wanted to go from different parts of Europe, wanted to reach Rome. The name means a way that originated from France. It was forgotten for many years until the last century, when from the beginning of 1990 it was reconsidered because it was inserted in the program Cultural Roots of the Council of Europe. In fact, now there are many projects that are related to the reconstruction and to the promotion of the Via Francigena. And our UNESCO chair in Lugano is part of the scientific committee of the European Association of Vie Francigene. ICTs are deeply used in order to support the experience of pilgrims along the Via Francigene. Some other studies and research directions. We made also an analysis of the tweets sent by pilgrims along the Camino de Santiago, St. James Way, to observe changes in the mood. And in fact, it came out that pilgrims, they change a lot their mood along the way until they are almost at the end of the way, and they start seeing the final cathedral, the point of arrival, the Cathedral of St. James. At that point, their mood goes up, 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 and they have a renewed energy to go until the end. Then, as I mentioned, we are also looking at the supply side, supply in terms of the information that are provided for visitors of attractions of the religious heritage. And specifically, we are doing an analysis of the mobile apps developed to support visits at Italian cathedrals in order to see what they offer, especially in terms of information. Also, we are doing surveys among visitors to sanctuaries. For instance, the sanctuary of Loreto in the center of Italy, that is considered the house of Virgin Mary. So we are doing these surveys to analyze the use of ICTs before, during, and after the visit. The last two are ongoing research, so I'm not able in this moment to share the results with you. But if you are interested in our activities and in our research, you can follow me on Twitter, or you can follow my updates on ResearchGate, a channel that I try to keep updated with the last research that we do. So this is all that I wanted to share with you today. If you have questions, or if you want to discuss with me any aspect related to this topic or to other topics that we discussed on our eTourism MOOC, please contact me. And remember that we are but travelers here. Bye-bye.